excited to bring Set It and Forget It hydroponics to you all. Even though we're at a distance, it doesn't mean that we can't continue learning. So Set It and Forget It hydroponics is an excellent method of growing your own food that can be really affordable and simple. So I'm going to get into some of the basics of hydroponic growing today, and I'm going to talk about the history and the science behind how all of this works. And then I'll equip you all with a method that is sure to get you growing in no time. So let's get started. There we go. This is my first time doing a Zoom meeting like this, so I apologize if things are a little bit clunky. As you can see, that is me, Hannah Wooten, and here in Orange County, Florida, that is Orlando area. So we have a really urban population, and that means we don't have tons of extra space to be able to grow all the food that all of these people like to eat. And that's one huge benefit of hydroponic growing that we'll talk about today, is the ability to grow food in less space and in unconventional growing areas. So as mentioned before, we're going to define hydroponics, go over the history of hydroponics, talk about why we should even consider hydroponics as opposed to conventional systems. Then we'll dive into the science and talk about how you can set it and forget it in your own home, inside or outside. I'd also like to direct you to a couple links that I placed in the chat where you can find this in a blog and a YouTube video. We'll be playing the YouTube video today if the technology allows it. That provides you a great overview that you guys can use on your own time with or without this lecture online. So hydroponics is derived from the Greek words hydro meaning water and ponos meaning labor. The translation is really water working. It almost sounds magical to talk about water working, but it is in fact just science. It's a method of growing plants without soil using mineral nutrient solutions. And you're either going to be growing those plants directly in the water with those nutrients, or you would be growing in some sort of inert medium, like a perlite, gravel, mineral wool, even sand can be used in hydroponic systems. So we're really just trying to deliver only the nutrients needed by the plant to the roots of those plants. And hydroponics has been around for a heck of a long time. In fact, we have evidence of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon using hydroponic techniques in around 600 BC. There are ancient texts that describe these methods of watering plants' roots in a tower with these nutrient solutions. And we have real archaeological evidence of hydroponics being used in the Aztec Empire in these systems known as chinampas, which I have some images here of what we think they look like. These were floating rafts that the Aztecs built in the water bodies surrounding their civilizations, and they would grow food on those rafts. The food would be using the nutrients from that water, and they would be paddling through these man-made islands to harvest some crops. Then we'll fast forward to the 1800s. That's when us humans started getting really fancy in the laboratory. That's when we started to define all the different parts and pieces of plants, the functions of those different parts of the plants, and we started to define the essential nutrients used by plants. That's when we learned that plants could be grown in water as long as they were provided with the essential nutrients that they need for their growth. Fast forward to the 1930s, that's when the term hydroponics was first used by a University of California professor. And in 1945, hydroponics were used for national security. We were in the middle of World War II, and when we have our soldiers out at sea, there's no way for us to provide fresh produce to our guys. And the United States government did employ hydroponic farms on Ascension Island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean so that we would be able to provision fresh produce to our soldiers. It was very expensive at the time, but when it comes to national security, we have a spare no expense attitude. Fast forward just a few years, and that's when plastic happened. Even though we have islands of plastic in the ocean now, plastics did allow a lot of things to become more affordable. And it did allow for a lot more new possibilities when it came to hydroponic growing, because we could use PVC pipes and we wouldn't just have to use glass for greenhouses to protect our plants. So that made things a lot more affordable. Then over the past number of decades, we've had more advancements in botanical research and even more technology that seems pretty simple, but things like pumps, time clocks, plastic plumbing, solenoid valves, and artificial lighting have allowed for almost complete automation of some of our growing systems. And when labor is one of the most expensive things associated with our food, being able to automate systems is something that is really beneficial. So the benefits of hydroponics, in general, you can produce the same yields as conventional production using up to 95% less water and 80% less space to achieve the same yields. And you see an image on the screen that shows the same yields with the amount of water and land that you would use in a conventional system compared to hydroponics. We have efficient fertilizer use. This is huge because when we talk about water quality issues, a lot of water quality issues are driven by nutrients and nutrient pollution that ends up in our waterways. And those nutrients might be coming from our lawns or from our agricultural systems, or even from a number of other things, non-point sources. But efficient fertilizer use is a major benefit of hydroponic systems. You can grow food faster in hydroponic systems, but is that economically feasible or recommended at this point? No. There would be a lot more inputs that you would have to do in order to even get close to that. But there's a lot of research that's happening out there that's looking at how we can enhance the efficiency of these systems. You can be successful with hydroponics without the use of herbicides or weeding, and you can reduce the use of pesticides. You can be very successful using a more organic type of a pest control system in a hydroponic growing operation. Overall, you can be successful on non-arable land. So urban areas, rooftops, indoors, brownfields that have been affected by pollution, where you can separate your crops from the polluted soil, and even unsuitable climates. Israel is actually one of the world leaders when it comes to hydroponic growing, and that's because they are incredibly water limited. So hydroponics is definitely being employed because of these benefits. You can go vertical. That means that you can increase your productivity, and if you're in business, you can increase your profitability per square foot by going up as opposed to out. And overall, you can create a self-sustained city-based food system with less strain on distant farms, transportation, carbon emissions, and habitat. And here you can see that Singapore, an area that is highly urbanized, has made a lot of investments into different vertical farming systems so that they can supply a portion of their own food. So why do we even talk about this? Well, we have a lot of people on our planet, and our current population is expected to increase from 7 billion to 9.5 billion by about 2050. And currently 1 billion people do suffer from hunger. Habitat loss is considered the leading cause of the loss of biodiversity, and at least 38% of Earth's surface is currently used for agricultural production. So when you really start thinking of our global landscape, we don't have really many more suitable areas to be able to continue agricultural production following the same trends that we have been for the last 100 or few hundred years. So we need to get innovative. Luckily, we do have scientists who dedicate their entire lives to coming up with these solutions, and hydroponics is one of a handful of solutions that can help with this population growth and provisioning food. I will tell you the good news. We waste so much food that if we just didn't do that, we would not have this global food situation. So there are some other things that we can do when we look at the food system as a whole. How the food moves from the farm to the table is another really big piece of this puzzle, but that's an entirely different lecture for a different day. But I do think it's worth noting some of those things. Here in Florida, we have our own food situation going on. We produce the second highest value of vegetables in the entire United States, and agriculture is the second largest industry in Florida to tourism. And the farms and urbanizing counties face some really special challenges for long-term sustainable solutions. So how do these highly urbanized areas with dense populations of people provide at least some of the food for those high populations? Well, hydroponics is at least one solution. All right, now we'll dive into the science, but fear not, we'll break it down. If some of this is overwhelming to you, then just see the blog and follow the teaspoon recommendations and you can be successful. But I know that some of you are really want to know all the nuts and bolts, while others just want to know, hey, break it down, tell me the basics, so that I can be successful without having to become an expert. And this method can work really well for whatever type of gardener you are. So it really comes down to honoring the basic needs of the plant in a hydroponic system. And that comes down to photosynthesis, the ultimate light diet. Because yes, plants do eat light to make their own food. And it is a mixture of carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight or energy from an artificial light source that helps plants to build their own sugars, and then they get rid of this oxygen that they don't really need, but us humans certainly benefit from that oxygen byproduct. So that's really the basic way that plants grow. So we need to make sure there's carbon dioxide in the air, there's water and sunlight or energy for our plants to be able to grow and be healthy. But a plant that only survives off of a diet of light and photosynthesis is going to be nutrient deficient. That would be like us humans surviving off of a diet of white rice. Would it satisfy your hunger for a certain amount of time? Yes. But would you be healthy? No. And that's because we know that we need balanced nutrients. A plant needs nutrients as well, and there are about 17 essential nutrients that scientists can agree on. And a plant cannot complete its normal life cycle in the absence of an essential nutrient. Those nutrients are obtained through the water, air, or the soil. So in hydroponics, all of the nutrients must be supplied to the plant since we're not growing in soil. But we can't just supply those nutrients. There is this little thing, it's called the pH, or the acidity or alkalinity of our nutrient solutions. Our pH must be balanced in order for the uptake to occur. And I'll get into a little bit more on that shortly. In addition to having the water, light, carbon dioxide, nutrients, and balanced pH, in hydroponics, we need to replace the job of the soil. The soil will help us to support our plants so they can stay upright and anchor in. So we need to replace that in hydroponic systems with things like net cups or other types of media. And we need to consider the airspace and the oxygen for roots. In the soil, there are little air spaces between the actual soil particles. So that's something that we have to replace in hydroponic systems. Now, most hydroponic systems are active systems that involve pumps and aerators, and they need water to be moving. That's why you'll see the bubbles like fish tank bubblers in hydroponic systems. That's because we still need to provide oxygen to the plant roots. And most systems do require those extra parts and pieces, but there are a handful of passive hydroponic systems where you can be successful growing certain short-term, low-profile crops very successfully with very few inputs. So you can reduce that upfront cost while still being successful at growing those plants. And that's what I'm teaching you today. So photosynthesis, we've got water that is taken up through the roots. Carbon dioxide is just in the air all around us. We have energy that comes from the sun or a strong artificial light source. And our plant uses all of that to create sugars to help it grow. And then the plant will get rid of this byproduct of oxygen that we love so much. So a little more on the essential nutrients. We have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen that come from the air and the water. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, that's the meat and the potatoes for the plant. Those are the primary nutrients used most heavily by the plant. The calcium, magnesium, and sulfur are secondary nutrients that are typically available in the soil. These are the ones that we need to supplement in a hydroponic situation. Fortunately, there are lots of different hydroponic nutrient solutions that exist out there, but your typical garden fertilizer that you would use for your landscape plants or your vegetable garden, it's not going to have the right levels of the calcium, magnesium, and sulfur because those elements are already in your soil. So that's why we need to pay special attention to providing our hydroponic plants with the right type of nutrients. Then we have our micronutrients listed here. These are absolutely essential, but they're just like the seasonings for the plant. So our plant doesn't need as many of those. They don't need quite the same quantity of some of those micronutrients, even though they're absolutely necessary. And you've got this image here that can show you how over time you can really start to get to learn your plants, and essentially you can learn how to read your plants based off of where you're seeing deficiencies occur from nutrients. And this is just a visual to show you the different quantities of nutrients that our plants use, that NPK. That's what you'll typically see on your fertilizer label. Those 3 numbers on the front are referring to the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium levels. A nice balanced fertilizer is good for a hydroponic situation, and for leafy green crops, things that are more geared towards foliage that might be higher in nitrogen, lower in the phosphorus, can be good options for growing leafy greens that can be easy to grow. We measure our nutrients in a few different ways, but if you are not interested in spending $60 to $160 on some of these meters, then you can just keep it simple and make sure that you read the label. But for those of you that are really curious about this and thinking of getting more advanced, electrical conductivity is used almost exclusively by commercial growers. It's used almost exclusively in research-based documents. It's unambiguous. It's an industry standard and there are no conversions. The meters are typically available online. Total dissolved solids, or TDS, is used frequently by hobby growers, and they are more commonly available in hobby hydroponic stores. You'll see TDS referred to more frequently in online forums. The thing is, it can be calibrated in a few different ways. So my TDS meter could be in the same solution as your TDS meter, and it might read a few hundred points different. So I just want you to know that those are some differences. If you're thinking of going commercial, I would go with the EC route. But if you're just a serious home hydroponics hobbyist, whatever meter it is that you want to work with, just get used to that one. And if you're not even interested in taking it to that level, read the label and just stick to some of these simple hydroponic methods. Nutrient uptake is impacted by pH. This is a measure of acidity or alkalinity in an aqueous solution. And in hydroponic situations, the pH range is best between about 5.5 and 6. Anything that is outside of that range is going to lock out nutrients. So even if the nutrient is there, If the pH is not in the right range, the plant will not have access to it. So this is just a basic chart to show you that you can track your source water, your nutrient solution, and then achieve those goal ranges. But you can also go to the blog that's included in a link, and you can just follow some basic steps that you'll see in the video that I'm about to play so that you can be successful even without having to purchase some of those more expensive pieces of equipment. So this is how we bring it all together, and this is how we can set it and forget it. This was all demonstrated by professors at the University of Hawaii, Dr. Bernard Kratke, and is commonly known as the Kratke method of hydroponics, where you can bring all the concepts together where we have water and nutrients that are pH balanced, carbon dioxide in the air around us, sunlight or an energy source, support or an anchor provided to keep our plants upright, and then that airspace or oxygen. Now, I'm hoping that my video, sound, and everything works. So bear with me and we will get this going for you guys in the next slide.
Hydroponics can be a great, easy, and affordable way to grow your own food. Today, I'm going to show you how you can grow great-looking lettuce just like this hydroponically at your own home. All you have to do is set it and forget it. The first step for growing your hydroponic lettuce is going to be starting your seeds. Here, we're going to be using these Oasis grow cubes to get these seeds started. You're going to start by soaking those grow cubes in water and getting them completely saturated, just like this. Once your grow cubes are completely saturated, you can remove them and prepare them for planting with seeds. Today, we're going to be using green butter bib lettuce. These are pelleted lettuce seeds, which just makes handling a little bit easier. And with fresh seeds, you can just place one seed per cube. But if your seeds are a little bit older, it might be a good idea to place 2 per hole. Now that we've planted our seeds, they're going to be ready to germinate. So you're going to put them back into a container. We're going to reduce the amount of water in that container because we don't want the seeds to be completely flooded. But we do want them to have some water and some high humidity in there. So you can place those seeds in the container, cover it to keep that humidity high, and we're going to wait about 2 to 3 weeks while these seeds turn into little baby seedlings, where we will then transplant them into our buckets. While your seeds are in germination, you're going to have a little bit of prep to do. So right now, we are going to drill some holes in our 5-gallon bucket. We are using a power drill with a 2-inch hole saw drill bit to drill out the holes in the lid of our bucket. We're going to be drilling out 3 holes today so we can plant 3 heads of lettuce. It's good to stabilize the bucket and stabilize the drill using a little bit of pressure here. Just like that. When your lettuce seedlings are ready, it's going to be time for you to make your nutrient solution. There are going to be a few steps involved in making a proper nutrient solution for your lettuce. First, you're going to fill up your 5-gallon bucket with water, almost to the top, but not quite. You want to leave about 1 inch of space. That's going to provide the air which is necessary for your lettuce roots to grow successfully. In order to make a proper nutrient solution, we need to add nutrients to the water because that's how the plant can have a healthy, balanced diet. But we also need to balance the pH or the acidity of that nutrient solution so the plants are able to access those essential nutrients. These are some fancy meters that you can buy to measure your pH and the amount of nutrients in your hydroponic solution. But today, I'm going to teach you how to make those measurements with teaspoons and with very affordable pH strips. It's a good idea to go ahead and test the level of your pH first so you know where you're starting. We're going to use these very affordable pH indicator strips where you just put it in the water, lay it to compare the color, and you can see we have a pH of about 7 right now. That's neutral. We want a pH that's in the range of about 5.5 to 6. So now we're going to add our nutrients. The nutrients are going to help to lower the pH a little bit. Then we're going to add our vinegar to drop the pH to our desired range of 5.5 to 6. So we're going to start by adding 5 teaspoons of the nutrients. And now we're going to add 10 teaspoons of the vinegar. This is white distilled vinegar. Now I'm just going to give it a quick stir to evenly distribute the nutrients and that acidic vinegar throughout the solution. Now let's see what our pH looks like. Looks like we're right there between 5 and 6. Now that our nutrient solution has been pH balanced with our nutrients added, it's going to be time for us to place our seedlings, which are now about 2 to 3 weeks old. Now we're going to take that lid that we drilled those 3 holes in with the 2-inch hole saw, and we're going to place it on the top of our bucket. And we are going to take these 2-inch net cups to place in these 2-inch holes. You can see that the water level is up about halfway on these net cups. That's important so that our seedlings can remain in contact with the nutrient solution so that they can get off to a good, healthy start in this bucket. Now we're going to take these seedlings. You can see they're already rooting out here, and we're going to place them right here into our nutrient solution. At this point, your lettuce is going to be ready to set outside in a sunny location in the whatever months are your lettuce growing season. Here in Florida, that's going to be in the fall, the winter, and the beginning of the spring, where your lettuce can grow happily and healthily outside. Your lettuce is going to be growing outside for about another 3, maybe 4 weeks, and then your lettuce is going to look like these examples over here. Now, the real trick with the success of set it and forget it lettuce is that those seedlings that you started over here are going to push their little roots right down into the water and nutrients. And while your plant is actively growing and taking up that water and nutrients, that water level is going down. So you really can just set it and forget it. Now your set it and forget it lettuce is going to be ready to harvest. But don't forget to harvest it. I know your lettuce looks very beautiful and it's tempting to want to just show it off to everyone. But now you're going to want to harvest your lettuce so that you can enjoy what you've grown over the last few weeks. So here we're just going to take some scissors. We're going to harvest this whole entire head today, and we're just going to cut at the base of the lettuce plant. We're going to move that lettuce right here to a bowl where it's ready for dressing.
right, so I think everyone gets the point there. Again, that video is available on YouTube. And don't just take it from me, take it from all the people that have done this on their own. These are all images that have been sent to me from past class participants showing off their successful heads of lettuce. So I hope you all the very best success. We don't have really much time left, but I will be staying on so that we can ask questions after the next session on aquaponics that shows you how to involve fish in this entire process. So thank you all so much for your time and attention today. My name is Hannah Wooten, Extension Agent here in Orange County, Florida for commercial horticulture. Feel free to email me at hwooten@ufl.edu, and you can find that video on YouTube, and you can find a corresponding blog that can suit your needs on your schedule. So thanks again, and I think we've got an excellent presentation coming up on aquaponics.
Okay, wow, that was really great, Hannah. Thank you. We have a whole bunch of questions popping up here in the chat box. So if you have a question, if you want to go ahead and type it into the chat box, please. We'll go ahead and could you read the chat box okay, or should I read the questions to you?
You know, just maybe so Maxine can get started and we can stay on schedule. I'll go through the chat box and I'll try keeping up with some of these questions and answers.
Okay.
And we can visit it at the end if we have some time.
Okay, that sounds great. So if you guys have a question for Hannah, go ahead and type it in the chat box and she'll try her best to get all caught up on them.
Yes.
And we're going to have our contact information at the very end. I know, Hannah, somebody asked if you could share the link once again for that video, and I think Maxine took care of that. So let's go ahead and move right on here. We don't want to run too far behind schedule. Next up is Maxine Hunter, and she's with University of Florida Extension also in Marion County. And she's going to talk all about an introduction to aquaponics. That's raising fish along with your plants, something I don't know anything about. So we'll let her take care of that.
All right, guys, can you see my screen okay? Did that work?
Yeah, I can see it.
Excellent. Okay. So thank you for the intro, Bill, and Hannah, thanks for the intro on the hydroponics. That was awesome as always. So as Bill said, my name is Maxine. I'm in Marion County Extension, and I've been working with aquaponics for almost a decade now on a small scale. I've seen some large scale aquaponic facilities that have been very successful. But it's an interesting field because every time we go to a new facility, it's completely different. So I'm going to just talk to you guys about the basics and some real critical info on what not to do, and let you make some decisions on your own if it's something that you might be interested in. It's a little more complex than basic hydroponics, so we'll get going. Got to figure out how to move to the next slide. There we go. So aquaponics is basically a cycle that recycles the nutrients from fish, from the waste that they produce, and that creates a biosystem with some microbes, and you'll also possibly see some small red worms, and this turns into fertilizer for the plants through the nitrogen cycle. Aquaponics is a food production system that combines the conventional aquaculture techniques, so raising fish or crappie. I've even heard of a few saltwater systems, including shrimp, to raise food for a meat source in a soilless environment, and the addition of the hydroponic side of things, so raising the plants as well. It's based on a recirculating system and uses natural bacterial cycles to convert the fish waste into plant nutrients. So very efficient system. And when it's set up properly, it can be extremely useful with very little waste, but it takes some tweaking to get these individual systems at the correct parameters. So the benefits of aquaponics, they're environmentally friendly and very sustainable. They use roughly 90% less water than traditional gardening. They can be run with gas, solar panels, or an electrical power source. So we found that there are quite a few Caribbean islands that have aquaponic farms on them, and most of them are running off of solar panels in very remote areas. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It does recycle the nutrients and can be made mostly from recycled materials. So if you're looking to start a small aquaponic system in your backyard, we'll talk a little bit later about some of the things that you might already have on hand that you could get started with. Both the fish and the vegetation can be consumed in most of these systems. However, sometimes in Florida, because of our warm environments, it's easier to use tropical fish or koi, which would be more of an ornamental rather than a food fish. Here in Florida, we can do aquaponics year round, and these can be built in any indoor or outdoor space. So the main thing is if you do decide to do an indoor system, consider your lighting sources. You may need to add LEDs or some other alternative light source. I won't really get into lighting today because we just won't have that much time, but always remember that the plants do need the photosynthesis and therefore need lots of light. This does produce more food in a lot less space, so it does help with food security issues, and it is an organic production system. You can't add traditional pesticides to the system. You also can't add things like chlorine or vinegar or other acids to the system because you'll kill your fish. So it is a truly organic system. Types of aquatic species that you can use in these systems. Goldfish and koi are very popular in home aquaponic systems. Tilapia are more the formal commercial systems that we see locally. Brim and crappie are also possibilities, as are bass or perch. Catfish can be done in aquaponics. The downside to catfish is they do have the barbels on their sides of their fins. And they will often end up with bacterial or fungal infections in their skin and lesions because of the poking that they get, because we do these systems in such dense quantities. So the stocking rates are usually extremely high to get the nutrient levels for the plants. So catfish are not ideal unless you've got a much larger water system. We are seeing more and more systems with shrimp, crawfish, and lobsters. FWC has also done some saltwater systems with aquaponics using raising native saltwater plants for restoration purposes, and that's been pretty cool. And then ornamental cichlids as well as an option. Okay, types of plants. So you can do ornamentals, however, our primary source is vegetable products, so that's what we're looking at mostly. If you wanted to do aquaponics for ornamental production for your home, you could do things like English ivy, heartleaf philodendron, pothos, and bamboo. Again, that's not our primary focus here, so let's talk about the vegetables that you can do. Vegetable crops would include cucumbers, lettuce, herbs, tomatoes, peppers, squash, arugula, and beans. These all do quite well in aquaponic systems. The main thing is depending on how your system is set up, you want to make sure that you have a support system. If, for example, you've got tomatoes, you need to be able to stake them up or string them up where they've got enough support for the stem and for the vegetable product at the end. We don't recommend plants that are either root crops or that like really acidic environments. So some examples of these, if you're looking at the ornamentals again, things like azaleas, calendula, zinnias, and chrysanthemums are not good options. If you're looking at vegetables, blueberry, corn, perennial plants such as strawberries, blackberries, and then of course, again, the root crops, carrots, beets, potatoes, and onions. Those are not good options for aquaponics, and for multiple reasons. So first of all, when we talk about the acidic issues, so plants that love more acidic environments, your fish cannot tolerate that. So we'll talk more about pH in just a moment, but that's a big deal. So you definitely don't want things that really want that lower pH. Secondly, when you're talking about root crops, it becomes a food safety issue. Not only will you have issues with potential rot in your fruit crops that are in that root, but also just the general touching of the fish water. As far as the USDA food safety recommendations go, your actual edible crop should not touch the fish water at all. So, and that's really important when it comes time to harvest as well. So no root crops. All right, just a little bit about the nitrogen cycle. Again, their fish are going to eat, and it's really important that they eat a lot. When you've got these really fast production systems lined up, they're going to excrete a variety of waste products due to that eating cycle, which produces ammonia. The ammonia then transfers to nitrite, which bacteria break down into nitrate, which is what your plants are looking for. The difficult part about this is as the nitrate and ammonia and nitrite all build up, because they're all there at similar times but at different levels, you have to make sure it's balanced where the plants are using it fast enough that it doesn't become toxic to the fish. So the nitrite is the most important when it comes to your fish. It is extremely toxic in very small quantities. So if you have a good biofiltration system and a good bacterial source to start with that breaks down that nitrogen into the nitrate, you're going to be better off. So the reason that this is important is most of the time we recommend starting with either A, your plants first, or B, your fish first, not both at the same time. Personally, my preference is to start with the fish first, because then you can build the ammonia and the nitrite up, and the nitrate will come as the product of that. And then when you put your plants in, they're going to be ready to use that up right away. I've had very good luck with that, but you can do it the alternative way as well. But if you start with young plants, you're going to have to figure out what you're going to need to add to the water system that won't be toxic to the fish to give them fertilizer and food until you're ready to add your fish. But that bacterial cycle that develops is extremely important. If you don't have that bacterial cycle, it's almost impossible to get the system to function successfully. So there are also certain biological ingredients that you can purchase to add to your system, and that can help, especially when you're starting with the fish. So, but it's all about the bacteria. So here's a quick example of how the aquaponic systems work. It's usually a closed loop system that recycles the water from the fish to the plants and back again. So it's not super complicated. There's a number of ways to accomplish this. The main important factor is before the water is returned to the fish, it should be filtered through the plants, and you're going to want to maybe filter it again for any solids before it re-enters the fish water. And secondly, you don't want the actual biosolids to enter into your plant beds for food safety reasons. So we do try to put some type of a filter in between each different section to catch biosolids. There are three primary types of aquaponic systems that we'll touch on today. You've got a floating or wick system, the nutrient film technique, which is shown in the picture here from Epcot, and then an ebb flow technique. They're fairly similar. The floating system or wick system is the simplest of the three, and you can literally do this at home with some styrofoam, and you can either put it on top of an aquarium, or you can build a bed that has enough volume for your fish, and it just floats on top of your fish system. That easy. The nutrient film technique is what's shown, also called NFT, in the photo here, and that is where there's a constant flow of the fish water onto the root systems, but it's at very low volumes. And then the last one is the ebb and flow, which is where they fill up the plant part and then it drops down to a different level, so the plant roots don't stay wet all the time. Uh-oh, hang on. Back up here, guys. There we go. Sorry, hit the wrong button. It went all the way to the end. So here's a few examples of some homeowner systems. Did that switch, Bill? Are you guys seeing the correct slide? Should be on Aquaponics.
No, I see types of aquaponic systems.
Why did it not switch? Okay. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I don't know what I hit, but I hit something, went to the wrong slide.
You
Okay.
got it.
Thank you. All right, so Aquaponics is a very simple system. You can buy these systems ready to build from commercial products. So they sell these on Amazon. Some of your office supply stores also have them, but you can see in the picture on the right, this is just a little betta fish with some basil growing. So very small system, desktop system, but works very well. The one on the left is a system that I've built in numerous classrooms for teaching purposes with students. And again, it's just some cocoa pebbles and over the top of an aquarium. There's an inexpensive hydroponic pump in the aquarium that pumps the water into the beds and back down again. So these are very small, very easy to build systems that anyone can do. Another system is the Barrelponics. This is another system that you can buy these kits online commercially, or you can build your own. You can usually find these 55-gallon barrels pretty easily, and you can do them in a number of different ways. So in the pictures are just a few examples. I will tell you that the one in the center with the PVC pipe structure holding it up, I have built that system for a demo garden in Duval County, and I will tell you that it is not stable. So you definitely want something stronger for your framework than PVC pipe. So something like the 2x4s in the bottom round picture works fantastic. I've also seen several people that have built rows of these barrels cut in half for their aquaponics and greenhouses, and they've been very productive. So these are fantastic systems to use, very inexpensive, and a lot of times this is stuff that we can find laying around and have very easily. Then we'll transition into what a commercial aquaponics facility looks like. So this is a floating system. In the very back, you can see some shaded structures that house the tilapia tanks in them. So these systems are piped underground and run into the beds. The water flows in there and then filters back into the tanks. They've got some really nice filtration systems on this to keep this productive. So it looks a little different than some of the homeowner systems that we can come up with. So a list of just a few aquaponic farms here in Florida. If you're looking for aquaponic sources or you want to get further into aquaponics, some of the bigger ones include Morningstar Farm in Dade City, Traders Hill Farm in Hilliard is one I'm very familiar with, Aquaponic Links. And I'm sure there's some newer ones in addition to these, but most of these have been up and running for quite some time. A couple of them even offer classes from time to time. So if you're really interested in getting into larger scale aquaponics, I highly recommend checking with these guys. Green Acre Aquaponics is another one. So these guys have done it right. Another source, if you're looking to get further into aquaponics, is Auburn University. They do a short course specifically on aquaponics several times a year. It's a little pricey, but honestly, it's a lot cheaper than the commercial farms. And it's an extraordinary class. I believe it's a 2.5-day class. So if you're interested in looking into this, definitely take a peek. So the last thing we're going to talk about here on aquaponics, and again, I know this is a real crash course, but the normal parameters for water, if you don't have your water right, your tanks are not going to do well. Your fish will be weak and stressed, as will your plants. So a couple things to take into consideration. First of all, dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen is essential for your fish health. Your pH, we've already talked a little bit about. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Your ammonia, nitrite and nitrate, and then lastly, your total alkalinity and total hardness. So how do you find out what these parameters are? First and foremost, if you're thinking about doing this, I don't recommend using city water, and we'll talk about the chlorine in just a little bit, but secondly, we do have kits at several different labs throughout the state of Florida that can do water samples for you. So Marion County does have a test kit, and I don't get a lot of requests for it, but knowing what your water parameters are is essential. So dissolved oxygen. If your fish can't breathe, they're gonna die. That's the basics of it. Fish breathe too, even though it's underwater. So in order to have a happy, healthy system, you really have to have dissolved oxygen of no less than 5. Anything below that and their heart rate starts increasing, their respiratory rate starts increasing, and their activity will start decreasing, signifying that they are highly stressed. pH for your plants versus your fish does differ quite a bit. So as Hannah mentioned, generally we want a pH of 5.5 to 6.5. Marcel, please wait for just a moment. Sorry guys, I've got little ones at home. But your plants are going to want a pH of 5.5 to 6.5 for optimal nutrient uptake. This is not good for your fish at all. Lethal limits on your fish start around 4.0, so and above 11.0. The above 11.0 shouldn't be a problem for most of us, but that below 4.0, that can get scary real fast and your fish will not make it long. So your freshwater fish generally prefer 6.5 to 9.0, and so you've really got to balance that and stay right in the middle at that 6.3 to 6.5 pH to be successful with aquaponics. So some problems that you'll see if you are running a more acidic pH in your aquaponic system, you will have very poor growth rates. You may also have decreased pH in their blood system. Obviously, most of you won't be checking that for small systems, but in bigger commercial systems, you can check for that. And biofilters will not be happy either. And your biofilters are basically the glue for the entire system. So it's really important to make sure that your pH is correct. Okay, so your ammonia, this is what the fish excrete, and it's really important to make sure that this transitions all the way to the NH3 or the nitrate, so the fish can so the plants can use it. The nitrifying bacteria are going to be required, so you're going to need oxygen, surface area, and a carbon source, also called alkalinity, to be able to make this transition. So again, your nitrate is what your plants have been waiting for. This is what makes the cycle successful for the hydroponic side of things. So it all goes back to your biofilter. And what does it take to have a successful biofilter? Again, your surface area, a good oxygen source, and often that can be a challenge if you're working with a larger system. Smaller systems, it's not so difficult, but there are ways to calculate the volume of oxygen that a pump is putting out so you can make sure that you're accommodating your fish appropriately. Alkalinity, we can test with our test kits, and a good nitrogen source. So issues with city water, as we talked about, I don't recommend using city water. If you have well water, that's a much better option. Realize that often your well water is going to start out with a pH of anywhere from 7.8 to 9.0. So your pH is going to be significantly higher than what the plants want. So you'll have to take that into consideration. But if you're using city water, you've got to take into consideration the chlorine and the chloramine. Both of these are toxic, and they don't have to be in large quantities for them to be highly toxic to your fish. If you're oxygenating the water prior to putting it into the fish tank, that can help, but it is very lethal. So make sure that this is being addressed prior to using any type of city water. All right, a little bit more on the fish as we kind of wrap it up here. So we talked about target species being channel catfish, tilapia, and koi. These are some great examples. So you can also use some other ornamental fish if you're using indoor aquaria. But in bigger systems, these are the 3 most popular. When you're looking at any of these fish species, the most important thing is to know what normal is so that you can stop a problem before it occurs if you've got sick fish in the tank. One of the biggest problems with adding fish into your system, especially if you're using a commercial source such as PetSmart or another farm, is bringing in diseases. So if you have established fish already, we recommend using extreme caution before adding new fish. So some things to look for, obviously, again, keep an eye on your water quality. Hawk sells test kits and even test strips that can help with this. The test strips you can buy directly from their website or from Amazon. And they test everything from your total hardness and alkalinity to your nitrite, nitrate, as well as pH and other sources. So they're fairly inexpensive, or you can get a test kit that is a larger commercial system test kit. I believe those are the test kit 9As, but those are several $100s. But if it's something you're going to be doing frequently, I highly recommend learning to use that system, and we do have other courses that teach that. Inadequate nutrition. Make sure you buy a balanced fish food, not just a small fish food from your pet store, because you're going to want to make sure that these fish are growing at a premium so that they can be used for your end product. We already talked about toxin exposure, and then of course pre-existing diseases, both internal and external, can pretty much upset and crash your entire system. So it's really important to make sure that you're getting healthy fish to start with and that you're keeping an eye on their stress levels. So how do you know what normal is? First and foremost, you've got to know normal before you can recognize abnormal. And so with this, you're going to look at their body position in the water. If you see them flashing or flailing on their side, that's often an indicator that there's a problem or that they're sick or might have parasites. Color changes. Generally speaking, their color should be shiny or kind of have a nice sheen to it. If they're starting to become dull or have other changes in color, that's a big warning sign. If they stop feeding, or if you see them gasping for air at the top of the surface, that's also a very bad sign. And then if you've got negative interactions between them, either where you've got multiple fish picking on one fish, or if you see other aggressor behaviors or somebody that's laying at the bottom of the tank not moving very much, those are all indicators that you may have a problem getting started. So most problems in your fish side are going to be multi-factor, and when you're starting to explain this problem, be sure to be specific and have good records to help us figure this out. So we do actually have several fish veterinarians here at the University of Florida. So as part of our extension, this is something that we do work on. So last thing with aquaponics, the sanitation techniques and food safety are very different than your regular hydroponics. So I just wanted to touch on this quickly. First and foremost, wash your hands before and after you touch anything. That is absolutely essential. Human sanitation is the #1 source of contamination. Secondly, make sure you're managing animal feces. Even though fish are a cold-blooded animal that are quite different, you are still required to make sure that they are separate from your water sources that are touching the producible plant parts. So your actual harvested fruits. You don't want the fish water to ever touch that. Water sources for your fish and produce. You don't want to be using reclaimed water sources that might introduce other bacteria or fungal components. Zoonosis prevention, again, don't introduce new fish to your system if you've got a successful fish population going. And then of course, where are you going to dispose of any wastewater that does happen? You want to make sure that that is away from your produce. So you will have some waste from the system, but it's going to be pretty minimal. Okay, computer. All right, so just a quick example of how you want to handle produce when it comes time for harvesting. Just like in Hannah's video, this is a lettuce production in an aquaponic floating bed. And you can see the first picture on the left, they're cutting from the top and removing the head of lettuce. And then on the right, they're actually reaching into the water, and that is a big no-no. So our closing thoughts on this: aquaponics is new and exciting. Although it's been going on for many centuries in different cultures, it's fairly new for a commercial production system here in the US. Water chemistry or water quality is absolutely critical, and you have to focus on pH and nitrogen cycle at the start of your production. So city water is not fish friendly, and make sure that you consider new products. So don't be scared to be creative. And we're here to help if you've got questions. So there are a number of commercial designs available now that weren't available 10 years ago, probably not even 5 years ago. So it's not nearly as difficult to get started as it used to be. But there's lots of room for improvement and for growing. So happy growing, guys.
Okay, wow, thanks, Maxine. That was great. If you want to go on and start trying to answer some of the questions in the chat box, I'm sure Hannah was typing pretty quickly, but she seemed to catch up with most all of hers. When you go ahead and stop your screen sharing, I'm going to go ahead and put our slide back up that has the website, the address for the web page that we're going to have all the information on. We're going to have the recordings of today's presentations and tomorrow's presentations up there. Let me go ahead and screen share and open it up and see if I can do it correctly here. So there we go. If everybody could give us just a few days, I'd give us until about Monday or so to get all of our materials up here on this web page. We'll be sure to put all of our contact information there also. So if you have any other questions or need any other help, we're more than happy to help you. In about 3 weeks, we're going to have a special separate question and answer Zoom period. So when we get together and pick a day and time for that, if you're watching us on Zoom and you put in a correct name and email address, we will email you. Otherwise, we'll make mention of the day and time and the exact Zoom address to go to on this web page also. We'll put it on there. And then for anybody who might still be watching us on Facebook Live right now, watch our Facebook pages. We'll go ahead and put it up on Hernando County Extension, Marion County Extension, and Orange County Extension, all of whom should have been showing the entire presentation today on their Facebook Live. We invite everybody to join us tomorrow, same time, same place, same Zoom address. And we're going to have Dr. John Roberts talking about microgreens. And I'm going to kind of bring up the very end there, talking about the most common insect pests that you're going to encounter when growing hydroponically. So you definitely want to catch both of those. The Zoom address is going to be the exact same. If you registered for today, you're automatically registered for tomorrow. So you don't have to worry about re-registering. And really about the last thing that I wanted to mention, let me go ahead and get out of this. Hopefully most everybody had a chance to write that down. Really the last thing that I wanted to mention is in probably about 30 days, everybody who is here today and everybody who is here tomorrow, we're going to be emailing you a very, very short survey. Trust me, I hate filling out surveys too. We make ours short. I don't send the 5-pagers. But we do like to send out surveys after workshops like this, just to get an idea of were we a benefit to you and were you able to start a system and kind of follow up. It really helps us evaluate and fine tune our workshops when we're putting the information together. So we really appreciate you take the couple minutes, and trust me, it'll only be a few minutes to fill it out and send that survey back. We really, really appreciate that. So I see that Maxine is still answering questions here. Maxine, are you about done with answering questions?
Yes, I believe so, Bill. I think I got the majority of them. If anybody has further questions, feel free to email me. That's not a problem. Be happy to answer any questions you have. I think I got all of mine though.
Okay, great. So we do have one question from Wade here about, will the chat transcript be on the web page? Yes, on the web page, I will just put a link that goes back to the Zoom transcript, and it does have all the chat on there. And we will also, today's presentations and tomorrow's, we're going to save as a video. So we'll put the video there also. So by the time we get done, it's going to be a very full web page. We will try our very best to have everything imaginable there for you so that you have things to refer to, a little extra reading, ideas of where through University of Florida you can get some more information. And Wade, I'll go ahead and put that on my list of things to put on the webpage, and we'll make sure that it's there also. So, wow, we even did pretty well here time-wise too. We showed some pretty good time management today. So everybody, thank you very much for joining us today. And like I said, please be sure to be back here on Zoom and Facebook Live again tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And Carla, yes, the link does show as password protected because we have nothing on there yet. So if you go back, I would give it until about Monday. If you go back Monday or anytime after that, you won't have to have a password to get in. It'll all just be right there in the open. So write down that web address, but don't try using it until about Monday or so. That gives us a chance to get everything processed and the videos done and everything uploaded. So with that, thank you very much, everybody. Everybody have a great day and be safe out there. And we'll see you tomorrow afternoon. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.